The Face Zone is a creative space where I imagine, draw, and write about it. What holds the pieces together is they all start with an illustration of a face of some kind. Could be a human face, an animal, an alien, something abstract. And then there's a little caption below the illustration. And to accompany the illustration, there's some kind of short poetic prose writing that's about whatever theme the art suggests. And it's called the Face Zone because all the illustrations have faces. And I like the word zone because it opens up this other imaginative world and space, and that's really the point of this work, is to set mind in motion. I originally was a musician by trade, and for a time I was away from that, and I needed to come up with something else to fill that creative void. So I really just started doodling for my own amusement, and they all ended up being faces, I noticed. And then I had the idea to put these little captions below each one. And then that led to the writing, which led to the books, which led to the live show that I also do, where all the writing pieces are memorized. And then when I do the spoken word part, whatever the face art is will be on a big screen next to me, projected. And then at some points during the show, I stop and do one of my original piano compositions just to kind of punctuate hearing me talk the whole time. So it's art, words, and music to trip your imagination.
Tonight's exhibit is really featuring the work of Joan C. Waits. She's from Silver Spring. I'm from Takoma Park. And she got her start sort of in the children's book world with my book some almost 20 years ago. Okay. Now at that time she was mostly an illustrator on educational books and that sort of thing. And I learned about her in seeing a broadside that had the work of a number of artists, and that appealed to me, so I went to see her, and we sat down with my book, and then it was a manuscript, Little Ned Stories. So it was all put together. We went into the publishing process, and printed more books than anybody would for a first-time book. 32,000, right. Fortunately, I live in an older house. I had room for it. Everybody said, "You're crazy. You'll never sell that." Well, I can say I'm now down to 900 books, but it took all them years to sell it. After that book was completed, and she continued to do her educational book work, and also started to land with some major publishers, like say in New York, but they're as an illustrator only. And she started that work. But at the same time, she published other works of mine, notably The Balloon Galoon, which is on display here. She also did illustrations for my other books, The How-To Cowboy. Here it was, again, ink drawings, and a couple other books. It was a collaborative process that worked perfectly as far as I'm concerned. And she liked it because very few illustrators get that opportunity, to work with the actual writer, etc. Now, in the meantime, she's still landing jobs with major publishers in New York as an illustrator, and at the same time, she was a teacher then. She taught at the Corcoran. She, by the way, now is teaching at the Writer Center in Bethesda, and she has a home studio. She illustrated approximately 15 books, and last year she hit with her first book as author and illustrator, and that's being displayed.
Here you will see a collection of my photographs combined with quotes by all of the US presidents that I collected, and the photographs are all mine. So my inspiration was to find something positive to put out, or bring out in the cosmos. At a certain time, I thought I couldn't find inspirational sayings by all of them, but I didn't give up and kept on digging deeper. Some of the images did call out for quotes. Some of the quotes did call out for photos. And I had a few aha moments when I read something and then I remember, I have an image that describes this exactly. And then I had to find that image and remember, when did I take it? Where is it? But I know I have an image that describes this exactly. I took thousands of images. It's a 2-year project. Selecting quotes from difficult time period in history was challenging for me since I was focusing on uplifting messages. I was driven by presidential words that have universal meaning. At the time they were spoken and even now.
I have several series of paintings up in the show today. Most of them are based on sketching that I do at concerts, do a lot of live sketching kind of wherever I go, and the paintings are loosely based on real local musicians. I usually alter the faces, alter the compositions quite a bit from the original sketches. I'm not necessarily concerned with them representing the original person, and more just about the feeling and the emotion of the moment. There's also a number of the paintings have either comics or elements of comics in them. Some of the comics are very abstract. It's sort of just about the idea that every musician is telling a story, and so there's a lot of work related to that. And then I also have a lot of work in right now that has recycled materials and reclaimed materials. I work at a social work program for artists with disabilities, and there's always leftover materials at the end of the day, particularly a lot of leftover paint. And so instead of washing it down the drain and letting it get it into our water systems, we let it dry, and then I collage with those materials. I personally find sketching live to be way easier. There's very little requirements in your sketchbook other than whatever you want. So it's yours, and you don't necessarily have to share that with anybody. Whereas if I'm doing something in my studio, the intent is that it's going to be public. I want it to be out there. I think some of the paintings involve very clear color schemes. So if it's a drawing from a concert, I might try and ape the lighting display from the show. If it's a particular mood, I might try and tone it down a little to focus on that mood. I gotta say though, in a lot of cases, I just sort of go with colors that feel right in the moment. And I think a lot of that just goes back to sketching. It's just whatever I'm feeling in the moment.
It is an installation of my fiber works that I do, fiber figures, some people might call them dolls. And I create them from reclaimed materials. I create them from pants. So in some descriptions, I call them pants dolls. They're all made from denim jeans or other types of pants. And some of them are painted. Some of them have original material. And then I adorn them with other types of reclaimed materials mainly. About 6 years ago, I was part of an exhibit in Charleston, South Carolina called the Black Mermaids and Mere Women exhibit, put together by Toria Washington. And all of the artists created either quilts or figures to represent black water creatures. And I chose Olokun, which is an African spear for the deep ocean. And so all the figures that you see in the installation are inspired by Olokun. And it's been a project for me that has been about environmental justice, to honor our ecosystem, our water, to kind of remind us to respect the earth. And it's also in honor of all the millions of Africans who perished, survived, or descended from the African slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade. So the project has meant a lot to me just in terms of dealing with Olokun as that deep ocean spirit that would govern the realm where our ancestors' bones settled during the Atlantic slave trade. It's been really important to me to work with reclaimed materials. I found that the fashion industry, especially the industry that creates denim jeans, is one of the most polluting industries. So in terms of it honoring the ocean and the water, it's been important to work with reclaimed fabrics. I'm not adding to the stream of material created. I'm using something that's already been created and I'm reclaiming it. The other things in the installation are other found objects or things that I've created, wood, plastic, metal, ceramic pieces to kind of represent objects in space.
Certainly for Takoma Park, for holding affairs like this and displaying the work of artists, local artists. Very few, and they do it sort of like on 2-month cycles. So over the course of a year, people come to the community center, come to the library, computer room, get to see quite large display of art.
It's great for artists to have this opportunity to participate in exhibition like this and be a part of a team and a part of the community.
One of the things I've learned during this project is that it's so important to get outside of what are traditional gallery spaces where very few people circulate and put art in spaces where everyday people who may not go to a gallery can see your art. So I really appreciate that, hundreds of people, if not thousands, will pass through this space during the course of the show.
I think communities where the arts are celebrated, where people can have access to participation as either as creators or as audience members, it always enhances the quality of life for that zip code.